Dear Mr. Johnson, re Julian Assange, Odysseus, and the Divine Right of Kings. Grail hunting in Extremistan. Our Constitution does not copy the laws of neighbouring states. We are rather a model to others than imitators ourselves. Pericles of Athens, Thucydides, History of the Peloponnesian War, 237. WikiLeaks is a radical new technology. It is so radical that we do not even have a language for it. People ask whether Julian Assange is a journalist. If he's a journalist, this might confer some impunities that other people do not have. In that case, we'd better say he's a journalist. But what is it a journalist does? A journalist takes a set of events and interprets them in a way that are the reflections of his or her own mind. They then write these thoughts down in a news article, thereby conferring several degrees of interpretation. The one they originally felt when the events unfolded, the one that became clear to them when they were writing them down, and the one of many possible ones that then appear to the reader. Every person who reads the article will be left with a different view. It is, in a sense, a work of art. A towering intellect called Martin Heidegger has told us something about this. But that is not what Mr. Assange has done. What Mr. Assange has done is to create a portal upon which people who have information to divulge can link up with people who wish to find out information. In that case, maybe Mr. Assange is more of a linker-upper. Doesn't sound very technical. We can see at once that an entire technical language will need to be invented in order to describe what it is that Mr. Assange has done. We are caught in a language prison. Just as currently we have no vocabulary for it, we have no ethical system. The technology he has invented has preceded our ethical capacity to establish any rule-based system. Now that the technology exists, there will be other people who will conceive that it has some practical use, and they will found their own portals. Depending on their particular political stance, be they of the left or of the right, they will inevitably produce divulgences of one or other slant. They will have names like Fastrep and Speedno, and no one will quite know what to do with their founders. Within the confines of some retributive and redemptionless modern dungeon, Mr. Fastrep says to Mr. Speedno, "Do you know, I've got some relations who are quite good with IT. Have you really? How about when next they visit, I give them a few instructions, and they can set up another portal. We could have something running in a month's time. We won't call it Fastrep or Speedno because we're in here, and the connotations will be negative. We shall have to call it something else. How about Sure No? We've already had No, so we can't use that again. How about Sure Web? The only place you can go to find out anything with any certainty about anything." Yes, I like that. It has a jingle. You called it First on SureWeb. When the ancient pharaohs encountered someone they did not like, they simply walled them up and left them to die. This happens in the final act of Verdi's opera Aida. The tragic hero and heroine are walled up within a tomb, and we hear their exquisite and transcendental lamentations pouring forth after the laying of the fatal stone. This happens to Sophocles' roving tragic heroine Antigone, who would rather perish at the hands of the cruel Creon than fail to bury in home ground the body of her dead brother Polynices. Knowing that the burial is forbidden, she does it anyway because she thinks that it is right. When Mr. Fastrep and Mr. Speedno set up their linking portals, they will do it because they think that it is right. They will act not from contingent right, which the Greeks called kathekon, but from first principles, which the Greeks called katorthoma. When asked, would you prefer to go to prison or hospital, they will declare that they would rather go to prison because by this means society has acknowledged that they are mentally intact. They did it knowing that society has prohibited it, but given the opportunity, they would do it again because they think it is right. The process of walling people up is called immurement. Mr. Shoreweb thought he was doing everything right. He thought he had taken every conceivable precaution. He was using Tor browser. He was using a VPN, but no, now we've got him. We've got him, and we shall convict him, and we shall put him in jail. But it was bad enough Mr. Fastrep communicating with Mr. Speedno. Whatever happens, we certainly can't have either of them communicating with Mr. Shoreweb. We will need some way to wall them up, so that no heretical thought can get from one prisoner to another, and no heretical thought can ever make it outside the prison walls. We won't leave them to die because we are decent. We shall give them food and water and let them out to exercise 1 hour out of every 24. This may be in the day or in the night, but it won't matter because they won't have any sense of time anyway. But what if they try to escape? These people are far too clever for their own good, and that is what has got them there. We shall ensure the windows are 4 feet long by 4 inches wide, and from no angle can any of them see the sun or the stars. In this way, they won't be able to work out their position, and because of that, no escape plan will ever be feasible. We shall build each cell in a way that is completely soundproofed, so as to make communication between prisoners impossible. Since they will live entirely in their own heads, and will certainly go mad if they are not mad already, we shall have to make the lavatories and the sinks out of poured concrete so they cannot hurt themselves. But for how long will we expect them to live there? Assuming Mr. Shoreweb is convicted when he is 20, and he lives to be at least 100, then we shall have to keep him there for the next 80 years or so. After all, we can't have any heresies getting out. Where will such a prison be situated? How much will such a prison cost? I know of a similar one to the one you have described that cost $60 million in 1994, but under this new regime, we shall need to locate one here in the UK. After all, why should we put these people on aeroplanes when the heresies run against our own ideology also? In today's money, that is about £80 million, and that is just the cost to build, let alone run. Where will Britain get this money from? Will the United States government give us the money? Will they lend us it? Will they charge us interest? If so, at what rate? Will we be expected to pay back the principal or just the interest? Will the American taxpayer pay the principal and the British taxpayer the interest? How will it all work? But what about that longing, that yearning, that hearkening? The German romantics knew it well. Schiller knew it, Goethe knew it, and Fichte knew it. They knew it so well, they even had a name for it. They called it Sehnsucht. In Wagner's opera Parsifal, the pathetic and hapless anti-hero stumbles across the Holy Grail. Naturally, for such a plot as there is, the thing ends indeterminately, but it matters little because the music is so stirring and so profound and so memorable that we need only to know that the opera is about something. The Sehnsucht within each of us is nurtured and nourished by the lavish Wagnerian heights of breathtaking musicality. We leave as content and as pleased with ourselves as purring cats. We have been seduced by the flower maidens. Our Sehnsucht is momentarily quenched. What if it were possible to get rid of it altogether? What is needed is a perfectly integrated, holistic system. When we've got one, we shall have the truth. When we examine one part of the system, for instance, the part that is known as ethics, we shall compare it with another part, the part that is known as physics, and we shall see there some similitudes. Why shall we see similitudes? Because we want it to be beautiful, and in similitude there is beauty. Why? Because fundamentally we are pattern lovers, and because the world is confusing and disorientating, because we cannot predict it, and we cannot thematize it. This blasted Sehnsucht, we want only to be free of it. If we could find a system that is perfect and integrated and whole, we should be like Odysseus, and we should have a homecoming, and there will be beauty and perfection. At last the utopia we have longed for, at last the paradise awaits, and we've only to realise it. A vast, expansive, beautiful system, of which we shall be in awe, because there we shall have found the Grail. I've got a yearning, I feel it in my gut. How can I know that it is real? How can I measure it? There must be some way to calibrate it. I shall go out and I shall measure people's craniums. By this means I shall know that I am right, and I shall have fused perfectly the Dionysian with the Apollonian. In philosophy, this is called positivism. This fellow's decalogues, the one he has taken from the 10 Commandments, people are to be immured rather than killed because thou shalt not kill. For him, Mr. Assange has chosen wrong when he could have chosen right. He's been given reason by God and the will to choose what to do with it. Mr. Assange has chosen to attack a most cherished thing, the cherished thing that has been sanctified by God, our blessed nation state. I am a man who is head over heels in love. I am so in love that I do not even know that I am in love. I am on fire with an overwhelming Dionysian passion. I am drunk with it and cannot get enough of it. I love the very soil from whence I sprang, and must do all I can to safeguard it. God has given us this thing to cherish, and he has given us the truth with it, that inalienable adamantine truth of which human beings alone are the custodians. A towering intellect called Immanuel Kant has told us these things. He has distilled for us in perfect philosophical form the Christianity which before seemed indistinct. It is no longer indistinct. I am right and I have the truth. If I were not right, I would not be standing here talking to you now. I am here because God has put me here. I am your very own, consecrated and anointed. In theology, this is called idolatry. But why should we take that Kantian towering intellect and the decalogue of that righteous fellow for our blueprint of truth? We've noted already how expensive these prisons are going to be. How about some other towering intellect of whose work we can vaguely comprehend a tiny fraction? How about someone whose intellect is so vast and towering it's barely left any topic untrammelled for anyone else? How about the great Nietzsche? He was all about will and self-mastery and brute force. We shall simply take from him a new decalogue and won't have any harping on about doing unto others what one would like doing to oneself or anything of that sort. We're never going to reach the truth, the utopia, the paradise we seek without brute force, so let's have plenty of it. Wherever we go, our truth-seeking will be accompanied by violence, and it will be reasonable. It will be reasonable because, within a very short time, it will be normative. In philosophy, this is called ethical naturalism. 6 years ago, Mr. Assange featured on a popular Radio 4 programme called Thought for the Day. In it he invokes Aristotle and ex hypothesi himself as the harbinger of truth. All one need do to find out the truth about anything, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, is to visit WikiLeaks, and there one shall see it displayed in all its splendid axiomatic and apodictic certainty. One shall see it there as clearly as 2 + 2 = 4. Assange himself will be the Barhesiestes of Michel Foucault, the literal bringer of light, like the one in the famous parable of Nietzsche. He will proclaim and declaim and rile and rail until we've all got it, whether we wanted it or not. He will be our luminary, our truth bearer, our new Messiah. One moment the United States will look like a perpetrator of military crimes. Another moment the Russians or the Chinese will look like a perpetrator of military crimes. Within a few decades, the old distinctions of left and right will have largely disappeared, since the world will quite simply be divided into people who are good with technology and people who are not. A framework is needed to establish which matters can be divulged through these portals. If it is not acceptable to publish names in documents because those people might be harmed or killed or otherwise adversely affected, is it acceptable to redact the names and still publish the documents? If redacting the names is a laborious manual process that takes too much time, is there a way to do this using a piece of software that can do the job within a few seconds? Without a suitable ethical system, we will be immuring people in concrete for the remainder of their lives. If that happens, what we shall have is not a living, pulsating, dynamic state in which moral decisions are being made in response to each new technology. What we shall have is a mere blueprint for a state. We shall have an arrested state. We shall have a dead state, like the one in that opera by Korngold. We shall have only memories of liberty. There will be a despot, perhaps not even an enlightened one. We thought he was enlightened, but no, as it turns out, he is not. He will be like the unenlightened despot in that other opera by Korngold. Despot or no despot, by the time all the various truths have been identified and assimilated and exposed, we shall be longing for an end to it all. We shall be like that character in that opera by Janacek. That's all for now. Farewell. Think on this, and don't forget, you caught it first on SureWeb. Free Assange, UK.